Hi, Russ. We are live streaming now, and I request you make me co-host.
There you go. We should have a sizable class today, so we'll just check the muting. However, a lot of the class will also be a panel discussion. So good afternoon, Kathy. Hi, Randy. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Joyce, Joanne. Jane. Kathy, do you use an iPad? Yes. I think you said, yeah, good. I'm learning to tell the cameras and angles of the devices. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Valerie. Hi, May. We've got one here that's just Mick. Mike.
Hello.
Is that your name or should we rename you? MIC. Mick. Got it. Hi, Eileen. Hi, Valerie.
Hi, Russ. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jutta. Hello, Maya. We've got Susan and Nikki. Bunch of new folks. Bunch of new folks on the screen. Just popping up on the screen. Familiar faces, but also some new faces, which I'm really glad for. Anybody so far, this is your first Get Set Up class? Oh, May. Fabulous. No. Yep.
It's my first class with you, but I've taken like 3 classes now so far,
Great.
including orientation. Thank
Great.
you so much.
So your first travel class. Great. We have lots of travel classes.
My first class with you.
Super, Joyce. So glad to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
A lot of people interested in traveling these days. I wonder why.
Yes.
We've been locked up. That's why.
We've been locked up. Well, I've just scheduled out a class today, and that'll start in a few weeks, called something like "Traveling After the Pandemic." When can we go where? Where can we go when? And it's mostly about how to find information. However, we've also got a speaker scheduled for June, another learner who is from Bulgaria. She lives in the U.S. now, and she does lots of she speaks about Bulgaria. And I said, that's timely because Bulgaria is one of the countries we can go now if you're from the U.S. Very interesting. A lot of places that are less traveled are places which are now opening up to the U.S. I still hope we get to see Regina here for our panel discussion. So I'm going to ask you a couple things to put into the chat today, if you would. The first thing is to put in the chat where you're from, so we get an idea where everybody's from today.
And how do you do that? Can I ask?
go into the chat, and if you're on a iPad, I think the John, our TA, can also help here. I think that the chat is in the upper right-hand corner of the iPad. And there's the little bubble will pop up, and you can type into it.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I know that because I took a class on how to use Zoom with an iPad. But you can get on Get Set Up. There's a special Zoom class for using mobile devices taught by Vicky. In fact, I'm going to take a guess it's available Friday because I've seen it several times on Fridays. I do want to introduce John to everyone. He's our TA for the class today, so he'll be able to pull up questions that you put into the chat and can also help anybody with any technical assistance that they need during the class. I'm going to do one quick thing here, and I'm just going to check in with our other panelist.
Did it.
Russ, when you hit record, would you be sure and make sure that your record is picking up your slides? Because I've ordered quite a few videos from people, and the video I end up getting is a video that's got the gallery shot. So that I can hear the guy talking, but I'm not getting to see the slides again.
Okay.
And that's, of course, obviously, once you get the link to the video, you can't change the view or anything. But that's happened to me twice when I've asked for the video. And I first commented on it and sent it back when they go, "Are you happy with it?" And I said, and then I just got some standard reply about, "Well, we can't send out videos to people that aren't joined to the class." I'm going, I was in the class, I got the video.
Right.
The video that was, and it was one that had a lot of good slides on it. That was why I ordered the video, because I wanted to be able to sit and pause and review them.
I'm going to pass that question over to John. He should have set that when he set up the recording. So maybe he'll just respond in here whether or not he's been able to, when he set that up. It is a setting in
so it has to do
Zoom.
On your end to make sure that the host, because then I ordered another one and I ended up getting, I think it was an exercise class, and instead of getting the screen with the instructor, it was the screen that had all the galleries. So it's like having to watch the exercises in teeny tiny form. So it was like, well, that's interesting. So it obviously has to do with not the setting I was recorded on when I was watching.
Did we move on?
Setting that the host recorded it on.
Yep.
Linda,
Yeah.
just a quick note. I use my phone and take pictures of the screen, and then I'm on another typewriter and I'm typing script as I'm hearing it.
No, and I've learned to use also, I did learn how to command and take screenshots while I'm watching. So I've started doing that.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just want to listen to the lecture again or whatever, or, go through and listen while he explains, what he's doing. And it just.
Is this class about travel, or is it about other discussion?
This is a class about travel, and we're about to begin,
okay.
Gloria. No problem.
Okay.
We're just going over a few practical details. I was trying to give our other panelist a minute to join us because Regina Porter was supposed to be a panelist. I don't see her on yet, and she might still join in a minute. So I'll give her one more minute to join, but I'll go ahead and start. But I do want to welcome everyone to our traveling solo class.
okay.
And we do have Randy Dijkhuis, right? Did I get that right?
You got it.
I got it. Yeah,
It's
it is
good.
also a Dutch way to pronounce it. I got the American way, and from Michigan. And we were going to have Regina, and I don't see Regina has joined us yet. She's also from Michigan. She's from Sturgis, Michigan. Hopefully she'll join us. We originally, when we first set up the panel, we had a third panelist who's unfortunately had some medical issues, and she's not been able to join us either time, Rosa. But we can go ahead and start anyway. This is a class on traveling solo. There is a class, by the way, this evening at 7:30 Eastern Daylight Time on traveling safely. A lot of overlapping questions and issues between traveling solo and traveling safely. So please come back to that class. That's a class where we hope to have lots of discussion. So please, I invite you to come to that class with your ideas or comments or questions about traveling safely. Today we're going to talk about traveling. Right now we're going to talk about traveling solo, however. So I'm going to do a little screen share with you here, and you should see something that says traveling solo. That should be right. And I'm your guide, Russ Eanes from Harrisonburg, Virginia. I'm an experienced traveler, including a solo traveler. I'm a writer, a walker, and a cyclist. I formerly was a book publisher, and I love to help authors shape their ideas into a book. I'm now a full-time guide with Get Set Up, and I'm doing this because I get a lot of energy from working with older learners. If you're new, you know that Get Set Up helps you learn useful skills from people like you so you can do wonderful things like how to do Zoom. Actually did a class this morning on how to do a slides presentation like the one you're seeing today. So that's the kind of thing you can come and learn. We have a couple classes on that. Ideally, we learn from each other. Ideally, your cameras are on and we can see you. You can see everyone else. You can request a recording of this class after the class. You can email help@getsetup.io. And if anyone's joining live stream, the best way to participate is to join us and register for a class. And Get Set Up's not paid to promote any specific products. Don't know if there'll be anything promoted today, but we're strictly an educational organization. Today's panel is Regina Porter and Randy Dijkhuis. Now, we may not have Regina with us, so we'll just have Randy share his advice, but I'm sure I happen to know from knowing several of you, there's a lot of solo travelers out there who can give your input and advice on some of these questions. I had asked each of them to share a picture. This is Regina's picture. From her trip to Taipei, which she had planned and executed completely on her own. And I'm just going to scroll through here and see if Regina is by chance here, and she's still not here. And lastly is a photo from Randy. Randy, you want to tell us a brief word about what this photo is?
Sure. This is from my trip to Guatemala in 2019. I was there for 3 weeks in April, and one of those weeks was Holy Week. And that week I was in Antigua, Guatemala, the second largest city in the country. And it's one of the largest celebrations of Easter really probably in the world. And hundreds of thousands of people descend on this town every year for their Easter celebration. And one of the things that they are well known for is the creation of these street carpets and alfombras, as they're called in Spanish. And they're made out of sawdust, many colored sawdust. And city residents and businesses and organizations work together to create these alfombras. They're on streets throughout the city. And they're done often overnight or very early in the morning. And then in the afternoon, these processions start. And then processions march through the city. And this happens every day during Holy Week from Monday through Friday. And then the big day is Good Friday. And they have processions starting The first one comes out of the biggest church in the city, I think around 3 a.m. And then for the rest of the day, there's these processions marching up and down the city streets. But as they do, they go through these alfombras, and you can see underneath the feet of the marchers here in the middle of the street, one of those street carpets. And it's completely destroyed. Behind the procession, which you can't see, but behind there comes a dump truck and a loader. And they scoop up the sawdust, put it into the dump truck, and then haul it away. And then as soon as the procession's done, people are back out on the street to recreate another street carpet and another alfombra. It's pretty interesting and pretty amazing that these people would put all this work and labor and love into creating these street carpets, and then knowing that in just a few hours, this procession and parade is going to come marching through and destroy the whole thing. They get to start all over again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do I see two large compact fluorescent bulbs in each of the cross piece of this cross?
Yeah, yeah. And because frequently the processions are occurring at night and after dark. So I imagine that's the way of lighting it up, or who knows.
Well, that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
I'll stop to share here so we can see each other. Randy, by the way, we just did ask Randy to share by way of introduction. Randy retired in 2019 after a 35-year career as a librarian, and his passions, he says now, other than travel, are genealogy, learning Dutch, and baking the perfect brownie. And he says that he is looking forward very much someday to getting back on the road like all the rest of us. I really wish Regina had been able to join us. She planned her own solo trip to Taipei a few years back, and she's actually working on one now for Japan. I like to have women and men share because women have a different perspective on solo travel than men do. And so there's some of you here that I know are pretty experienced travelers. And so you are welcome today to put into the chat your experience, and I can call on you to share about your experience of traveling solo. So I really welcome that. Please use the chat. That way we can kind of put in a little bit of order to the different ideas. But first of all, Randy, let me ask you, because this is a question a lot of solo travelers have. How do you plan your travel?
So it, to some extent, depends on where I'm going and for how long. But I do it all myself. I don't go through a travel agent for any part of my experience. I have a variety of websites that I use, flights, of course, Kayak and other sites that aggregate flights like that. You can use Google. They have a good flight site. For accommodations, my two main sites, I guess, are Airbnb and Booking.com. Both of them are obviously are very reputable sites and do a pretty good job of making lodging and so on available. So when I always go with a beginning and an end time. I know that some people will take off, they'll fly, and they're open-ended about when they'll come back. And so far, I've not done that. I have always said, I'm leaving on this date, I'm going to come home on that date. And in between, there's a whole lot of wiggle room. And so when I get to my destination, I usually know, not usually, I always want to know where I'm going to stay that first night. So I have a lodging that I have booked already before I leave. But after that, frequently it can be, I don't know exactly where I'm going to be after that. Because if it's a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 week trip, my itinerary can change depending on what's going on, what the situation is, what the weather is, if there's something special going on in the country. If I hear something that sounds really interesting, I say, oh, maybe I'll go there instead of here for this set of dates. So I'd like to keep my my schedule flexible while I'm in the country.
Yeah, and I've done that too. It's really nice not to be locked into something, because one of my pieces of advice I give in slow travel is learn from the locals. And often you may find out from some locals something going on or some place that you didn't know about before you got there.
Yeah.
I know 2016, my wife and I went and spent a week near Edinburgh, and we were in a town called Aberdour, which is on the north shore of the Firth of Forth. It's a big inlet that comes in from the sea. And we could see Edinburgh across the Firth several miles. And in the middle of it, we saw this island, and we said, what's that? And our host told us about it. Inchcombe, an old monastery on an island in the middle of the river. She said, oh yeah, you can take a ferry out there. And I said, I think I've seen that on a map. And that was our destination the next day. So it's nice to have the flexibility of figuring out what to do when you get there. It's good to have some ideas in your head, but also be flexible. What kind of places do you like to stay, Randy?
So I'll answer that by saying where I don't like to stay, and that's in hotels. I avoid hotels as much as possible. For me, the reason to go is to see and meet and greet people as much as possible, and that's harder to do when you're locked up by yourself in a hotel room. So that's why I like Airbnb a lot, and not so much when I was in Guatemala, but when I was in the Netherlands last time, I used Airbnb almost exclusively to book my my lodging, and I always looked for places that advertised as spare rooms in a family's home. And I wanted to, that was a way to meet local folks and have a chance to practice my Dutch, as well as get a chance to meet some real Nederlanders. And then the other place I like to stay is just B&Bs, traditional B&Bs. And booking.com is great for that. They have a lot of B&Bs that they work with. And so those are my two places. The one place I haven't done any yet, but is next on my list of things to do, is use homestay. Those sites that let you house sit for people who are going away themselves and they're looking for somebody to take care of their pets, or they want to watch their house while they're gone. And one of the websites for that is trustedhousesitter.com. And I was planning to use them last year for my trip to Europe. And of course, that didn't happen. So when I go next time, I'm hoping to add that to my list of experiences.
So I wonder if they're the same ones that do House Sitters Magazine.
Yes.
Okay. That's a good resource, and I'll try to put that link in the notes at the end. I'll make a note to put that in the notes at the end. That's a good site. Many of these places where you can do a service like house sitting and live somewhere free, it's a very trusted site. In other words, you have to join usually to be part of it, so they can verify who is involved, right. And there's builds trust from it, have profiles. What's the best thing, Randy, about traveling solo?
For me, the best thing is flexibility, and by that I mean not having to negotiate with someone else where we're going on that particular day. So it's not only about so part of that is being able to change on a dime to say, oh, I don't want to go there, I'm going here instead. And when you're traveling with somebody else, that's not impossible, And sometimes it's easy and other times it's more difficult. When you're by yourself, it's not difficult at all. You just make up your mind and you go. So that's the thing that I like the most about solo traveling. Is that sense of I can wake up in the morning and say, you know, I was going to do this today, and I really don't want to do that today. I'm going to do this other thing. That's for me is what's really cool about solo travel.
And so the other side of the coin is, what's the hardest thing?
Yeah, it gets lonely. I think that's the hardest thing. And sort of related to that is, you know, when you're traveling, you know, these special moments just sort of happen. And when you're alone, you don't have somebody to share them with necessarily. And that's always a special part about traveling. You come home and you have shared memories. You know, you're a solo traveler, you come home, you got lots of photos. But you don't have a chance of looking at somebody and said, oh yeah, I remember when we were in da 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 and this other thing happened, and then you burst out laughing. And yeah, so
in some ways the loneliness is what you exchange for the shared memory.
yeah.
Now I have done quite a bit of solo travel, mostly associated with travel with someone else. Like traveling with my oldest son to Scotland for a week, and then he went home and I stayed on for a week. Or on work, when I went to Germany 3 times, and 2 of those 3 times I went by myself, and I always tacked on 4 or 5 extra days at the end to do some solo travel, because I figured there's no point in going all the way over there and then just flying home. You might as well see some other things. And that's also what I found. I had the flexibility to do what I wanted, but I was wishing, especially my wife, could be there to share some of those experiences. Now, something a little different happened when I walked the Camino de Santiago. I was, for 6 weeks, I walked across northern Spain, and 4.5 of those weeks I was by myself. My wife came and joined me at the end. And I found that as I was walking, I had the flexibility to do what I want to do each day, but I also made friends with other people. So I built sort of a walking community. Have you tell about some experiences of getting to know other people? And are there any folks you've gotten to know, either maybe you lodged with them or you met them on your travels?
Yeah.
That was maybe there because you were by yourself and had the chance.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. My ancestors, most of my ancestors came from the Netherlands. And so doing some family history research, I discovered a very distant relative who still lives there. And started corresponding with her, and my first time, actually my second time to the Netherlands, she invited me to stay with them. So I stayed there for a few days. And then when I went in 2019, my third trip to the Netherlands, I stayed there for a few more days. And so we stay in touch, mostly through WhatsApp. We exchange text messages, wish each other birthday greetings, and if there's a significant event that happens in the country, we sort of check in and say, how's it going? What's going on with that? What do you think? So that's been very cool. And again, when I was there in 2019, I was at a language school and struck up a friendship with one of the other students there. And she and I have become pretty good friends since then. And we talk once a week in Dutch, and stay in touch that way. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. So you met someone who was a friend through a language school. How long were you in language school? This was in Holland, I take it?
Yeah. It was in the province of Drenthe, which is in the far western part of the Netherlands. It borders it's on the German border. And it was 2 weeks. We were there for 2 weeks. And she lives in Eindhoven. Most people go to language school are expats from around the world. They, from all countries. And she happened to be from America. She grew up in North Carolina, I think. And but we hit it off. She lived in Eindhoven with her partner, and and yeah, like I say, we talk once a week, and every once in a while our partner will join in the conversation. Then we get a real Dutch speaker who can correct us because both of us are kind of at the same level of learning, and we stumble through our conversations quite a bit.
Very good. One of the issues that comes up, and again, we got a whole class this evening on it at 7:30 Eastern Daylight Time about traveling safely. One of the questions people often have is, if I'm going to travel solo, will I be able to feel safe? Because if you're with a tour group, you're with a tour, or maybe you're going with a whole bunch of friends and you can feel safe in a group. What do you do to keep yourself feeling safe? And I know you shared a story with me yesterday about Guatemala.
Yeah.
And obviously the Netherlands and Guatemala are very different.
Yeah.
What advice do you have as a solo traveler about how to keep safe?
Yeah. Yeah. So, right. Guatemala and the Netherlands really are like two different realities in many respects. For me, it's all about staying aware of my surroundings and knowing where I am, which also means knowing where I shouldn't go. That's much more of an issue in a country like Guatemala, which has some strife to it, especially right now in the middle of the pandemic. There are parts of the country where I would just shoot. I would not go. But on the other hand, there is a well-trod path for tourists because Guatemala attracts a lot of tourists, and they come from all over the world. I discovered that when I was there. Lots of young people. It seems to be a destination for young folks who are doing their gap year. And then there are certain destinations within the country that they go to. So for me, it's figuring out, so what's that path that I should more or less stick to? Which means, don't run off into the rainforest all by yourself. Make sure you know the neighborhoods in Guatemala City, which is the largest city in Guatemala, which also has a reputation for being violent. And it's changing very rapidly from everything that I've read, but there are still neighborhoods in the city that you don't want to go into. So it was knowing, so I'm going to stay in these blocks here. I'm not going to this block here. So it's just being aware. And then also, even though I'm in a safe area, sort of what's going on around me, So and the story I told Russ yesterday was the long and the short of it was I should have had my eyes open going into this building that may not be a place that I wanted to get to, I wanted to be in. So everything was fine. It turned out to be it turned out to be okay. But there was a moment when I felt, ooh, I'm not sure I really want to be in this place right now. So then I said, adios amigo, I'm out of here. So then I left.
So one more question, and then I'll ask. Well, actually, two more. Yeah, one more question, then I'll ask the group to open up for questions. What about meal times? What do you feel like when you go into a restaurant, you have to be alone? I mean, even in the U.S., I find that sometimes, I don't know, awkward isn't quite the right word, but it's a time when you often wish you could be with others. Do you find you're able to sit at a table with other people or at a bar and talk and converse with others?
Yes. Yes, but I don't really have that same sense of or issue with eating alone. It doesn't. Other people have said that to me, and the first time I went somewhere on my own, I was gone for 2 weeks. I came back, and a friend of mine said, she said, "Oh, I thought that was really cool." And then I thought to myself, and she said, "I thought to myself, that means he has to eat alone every night." And she said, for me, that would have been the worst thing in the world. She's an extreme extrovert, and she loves being around people. And so that was the worst thing she could think of, was eating alone by herself for 2 weeks. And for me, didn't cross my mind. You know, I'm an extreme introvert, so being alone works for me. That being said, traveling solo, especially if you're going to do it for multiple weeks at a time, it can get lonely. And then finding a place where you're likely to meet some folks and strike up a conversation is important. And for me, the two places that happened was in bars, which you have to be careful about that too, and coffee shops. Not the Amsterdam version of coffee shops, but real places where you can drink coffee. And that was especially true in Antigua when I was in Guatemala. The coffee shops seemed to be the place to go. If I was sitting and have a cup of coffee, very often somebody would, you know, see an open seat, say, can I take this, and sit down, and then we'd have a conversation. So.
Very good. Now, Melinda had an observation or a comment about meals, traveling solo. So Melinda, I'm going to give you a chance to share about that.
Yes, as a woman and as a widow, one of the hardest things I've always had is going out and eating alone, because I've always, you know, to a nice restaurant or something like that. And so, of course, locally I have friends I can go out with and things like that. But traveling, you want to try. And I read a book written by another single woman, elderly, and her advice, and I've used it, and I recommend this to everyone, is gradually sort of keep going out to a place to eat, maybe get a nicer and nicer restaurant as you go up the thing, but sit down and just people watch. Because the thing I was always so self-conscious about eating alone was everyone must be staring at me and wondering, why is that poor woman not have a date or is having to eat alone? And the thing I found out that once you start to people watch and kind of do the thing of watch what's going on at the other table and kind of make up stories in your mind about what that family reunion must be like or whatever, or watch a couple, or, but A, that gets you outward, but B, the most important thing, you find out that not one person in that restaurant is looking at you.
They don't care.
They are so busy with their own table. And once I noticed that, that was like the hugest weight off my shoulder, and realizing that I wasn't being stared at for sitting at a table alone. And that was so liberating. And then from then on, I had no problem going at a nice restaurant and sitting down and not staring at the phone or anything. But like I said, go ahead and people watch and things like that. And that, it's interesting because you get to take in what's going on around you. But you do find that, like I said, no one else is looking at you. They are so involved with what's going on at their own table that they don't notice that there's a redhead sitting over there alone by herself. And so, yeah, I find that is the best advice. And from that, I've started eating, you know, getting to go ahead and enjoy and going to good restaurants and enjoy all these good foods, as opposed to just eating at a coffee house or a bar where you're just getting a sandwich.
Yeah.
So that's my advice.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yes.
Melinda.
No one else, but it was very helpful.
Thanks,
I
Melinda. That's great.
I
Who-
had an experience, Carolyn,
yes.
when I was traveling in Europe on the way home from Kenya. That was 1977. There were a lot of places I'd go, and it was just a huge, long family table. And you just took your food and sat down and started, you know, into the conversation with people, and that made it easy.
That's a great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
my experience is that that kind of thing happens more frequently in other countries than in the US. I had that
Oh,
experience.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's really true. That happens often in the Netherlands, and also when I was in Germany. That same trip, I was in the Netherlands in 2019. I spent a week in Germany, and in a restaurant, and the hostess basically sat me at a seat where it was a family, and said, "Here's some locals. Talk to them," so that was cool, and that happens. So that definitely happens more often in other countries.
Randy, those locals obviously did not feel like, what's this? Why is this waitress sitting a stranger with me who's interfering with our private conversation?
No, they didn't. They didn't speak very good English, so it was pretty darn limited conversation. But they were very friendly, and you know, it was nice just to be at the table and kind of listen to what they were doing.
Well, are you saying it was a restaurant where people were expected to share the table?
That is a good question. I don't know precisely the answer to that.
Now, let me ask something here. We originally had another member of the panel who was a woman, and Nikki's asking an important question here, or making an important point, which I do want to recognize, that traveling solo is different for a woman than it is for a man, especially in the issue of safety. How many women here, well, are solo travelers? I know, Melinda, you've been. And
I am.
Okay. And does any one of you want to share what the biggest issues are with you as a woman traveling solo?
And the biggest issue is that you get to sit somewhere by the kitchen or somewhere in the corner instead of having a nice view or something like that.
So, I mean, that's where they put you, or that's where you choose?
No, that's why they put you, because you're by yourself.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I haven't had that problem, fortunately.
Good.
But I think if you're bold enough to just, you know, ask where you want to sit, like you're entitled to it, like anyone else.
Any other women here, solo travelers, want to address any of these issues? Janet.
I travel solo, sort of. I travel by myself for a few days, then I join a tour group of some sort in that destination. Then I have a few days afterwards where I'm by myself again. So I sort of travel alone for a little bit, then join a group, and then I'm alone. But I haven't done that outside the United States yet. So far, it's just been in the United States.
Okay. And of course, outside the United States, a little riskier because now you've got issues of culture and language. Yeah.
Right.
I would say the biggest thing for someone traveling alone is to study. I found I used to study the airport, the entrances, everything, and I would try to walk through my head that when I landed, what I was going to have to go through. Because when you're alone and you're in a foreign country, everything's different. English is usually written on things, but different languages. And even if you've studied the maps and some things, and because you know, details of how to pick up the train into town and all this, and there are online videos where fellow travelers have actually taken a video and go, look for this sign and now look for this. And even having done that, it is still, like Russ says, it's still not as expected as you think, but the more prepared you can go so that mentally you're sort of psyched up as a single traveler, because you don't have a companion that can turn to and look at the maps and kind of go, well, where are we and what are we going to do? You have to really sort of, you know, be in control and be in command and be confident that, you know, that every time if you run into things and things aren't different, that you've got resources and backup information that's going to sort of get you out of it. Because there's, as Russ said, I don't care how much you plan, there's going to be surprises. So the more you plan ahead of time, that helps. That's what I found.
I would agree with that too. And I'm going to comment on the whole, you know, obviously I cannot say what it's like to travel as a solo woman. But I will say that in my travels, I have met many, many more solo women travelers than solo men travelers. And this has been something I've seen commented on in other forums, online forums and so on. And nobody really has a very good explanation for it. But it was especially true when I was in Guatemala. There were just a boatload of women who were traveling alone, and they were mostly women in their late 20s, 30s, thereabouts, maybe early 20s. But some of them were gap year things, and but others. There was one case I met a Dutch woman from Rotterdam when I was in Guatemala. We were watching a soccer game together because the Amsterdam team was playing in the Champions League that year. And she had been on the road for several years. And it seems like it was 5-ish, could have been a little bit less than that, a little bit more than that. I don't remember exactly what, but she had, and most of that time had been in Central America. And she was about to head back to Rotterdam for a family wedding or something like that. And the first time that she had been back to the Netherlands in a couple of years, but she was doing it completely on her own. And really interesting conversation to have with her. So for anybody who says, well, I can't do that, and if you're thinking that one of the reasons you can't do that is for your gender, I would say think again. Obviously, there's lots of precautions to take. Be prepared, as Melinda said. Make sure you got a good set of maps. Make sure your cell phone works. That sort of thing. But give it a whirl.
I'm going to come to Susan's comment here in 1 second. Susan, I'll be right to you. But I want to underscore something Randy said, and I think Melinda also said. When you're traveling somewhere, you should really take the time before you go to know where you are going to be and what are the precautions and issues, as well as all the wonderful things you want to see. And I can't underscore that enough. Know the issues of safety. I should say also, while I have not looked for this because I'm not mostly traveling solo, but I know that when it comes to travel forums, issues about safety, there are a lot of forums about that. And I think I'm going to guess that there's also a lot of issues about traveling solo. And I know when I walked the Camino de Santiago, there are lots of forum questions about people walking solo. Also, most of the people I met were women, though I did meet quite a few men walking solo. Susan, what's your input?
Well, I had put a comment there that I used to travel on business before I retired. And so I would have breakfast by myself, sometimes dinner. Usually I was having lunch with other people, but I just kind of got over the shyness of having other people see me eating by myself, because I guess I realized that they probably knew that I was traveling on business and it would be natural for me to be eating by myself. So after a while, I didn't feel, intimidated by that idea. But I did want to say that I have done combo travel where I'm alone part of the time and traveling with a group another part of the time. And as long as I feel like I can kind of, like the Western European languages, I can negotiate those. Now, I'm not sure I want to go to a third world country where I didn't know the language and I maybe couldn't read the script and that kind of thing by myself, without any contact or resource. But it's just however you might feel that you could protect yourself or feel comfortable. So.
Yeah, and that would be something where you'd want to do some research. Like I have a sister-in-law that went to Thailand for I think about 6 months, but she had done tons of research before she went. Actually, a travel blogger that lives there. She's found it's her favorite place to live. Is Thailand. She does all her work remote and all her blogging. Any more comments?
Has anybody used the language translator machines that are out now that weren't before?
Are you speaking like, for example, Google Translate?
I don't know, those little devices that look like a cell phone and you say in and push the language and it interprets for you.
I'm not familiar with that. I know there's app, Google Translate will do that for you. And you
have to type it in, or I guess you can speak it in.
You can speak it. In my one of the things I'll show you can do using your mobile phone for travel, which that class is next week. In fact, it's 11 o'clock next Wednesday. Come and join us. One of the many things your mobile phone can do for you is translate. You can hold it over a menu if you're uncertain what it says, because sometimes it's not just what the item is, what is that I'm eating, but like there might be some other important detail stuck in the menu there you didn't notice. If you want to read that, you can use your Google Translate. You can, I know people have done it. They picked up their phone, they've dictated in there what they wanted to say into Google Translate, hit say it in French, and it does come up in the screen, but you can also hit the audio. So maybe that is what Carolyn is referring to. I know
You do have to,
It's a gizmo.
a gizmo. Okay,
You buy it.
That's interesting. I can believe it.
you have to be careful with those translators though, because if it's something just routine that you want to say, you're probably going to be okay. But if sometimes they'll translate things literally and it comes out not at all what you wanted to say.
That's a very good point, especially the farther away you get from the standard Indo-European languages, you could really get in trouble.
I guess the only comment I'd say the last time I traveled, and I think I mentioned this the last class, is I took a fall and ended up actually breaking my wrist, where I ended up having, and oddly enough, even though we was in Italy and we hadn't been having any trouble with English, the doctor could not speak English and no one at the hospital could. I was like, I thought, you're supposed to be one of the more educated. So she ended up, it was all through Google Translate. She would like type into her phone, ask me questions, and then I'd type back, and that's how we got that resolved. But the Italian hospital system is another story for another day. But that is probably after that. And fortunately, on that trip, my brother and sister-in-law were along. But I was going to stay another 2 weeks after they left, but I ended up having to leave at the same time they did because of that, because I couldn't function. I couldn't drive a car or carry luggage or anything.
Oh dear.
So that's something that's now from going forward is in the back of my head as far as traveling single.
That's right. We're out of time in this class. I do want to just say a few things before we go. Again, tonight there is this class, Traveling Safely, 7:30 Eastern Daylight Time. That class will be repeated, so this is the only time you get a chance to do that. Probably be an afternoon class next week or the week after. I do want to ask if there's anyone here who's an experienced traveler, has some things you want to share about in a class. Melinda's coming to talk to us about home exchanges, and Randy's going to come back and talk to us about traveling to Guatemala and maybe other places. So please, I'll put my email address in the class notes, which you'll get at the end. And please get in touch with me and say, Russ, I've got a travel experience I want to tell everybody about. Also, if when we repeat these classes, especially the ones on traveling solo, traveling safely, I do like to have people that would like to come and be panelists. We've been very fortunate to have Randy here this week, and last week we had Randy and Regina. I'm always looking for more panelists or people that want to share about ideas and experiences. I will note also that in the chat, there's a lot of good information, classes, and many of you have put good ideas in classes. And so I want to mention to you that if you'd like to know how to save your chat, you pull up the chat and the bottom right-hand corner, this is on a desktop, there's a little bubble with 3 dots in it. If you click on that, you can save the chat and it'll save it all for you.
I'm sorry. My alarm is going off.
Okay. And so some of the notes that are flying thick and fast through the chat today, if you didn't pick them up, you can save the chat and then you can cut and paste them out. Janet is leaving us with a thought that she's found a couple of group tours that cater to women who are traveling solo, and it's worked well for her. But she's not because she's not ready to travel alone all the time. Well, that's a good idea, because many are in the same situation as you. And I'm going to do a little research to find out some forums about women traveling solo in specific that I'll try to get into.
The name of one of the groups is, they call it Women Traveling Together.
Women Traveling Together. Great.
WTT. It's not a low end thing, but almost all the women who go there are by themselves. And so then all of a sudden you're with 14 other people who want to do the same things you want to do. So you make friends for a week.
That's great. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. WTT, Women Traveling Together. Thank you, Janet. Well, I hope I see some of the rest of you in other classes. It's nice to see new faces to Get Set Up or to my classes today. And you are welcome to join us tonight, 7:30, for how to travel safely, which has lots of components to it. So I'll say goodbye, everyone. Have a good rest of your afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.